One big practice is one thing, but a whole bunch of big practices by one certain player, we got to talk about him on today's show.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. Happy Friday, everyone. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get yourself started. Packed episode again, folks. BC is in practice 5 days a week. Both my co-writer, Mitchell Wolf of Eagle Insider, and myself, we have been to 3 practices this week alone. I have so much I want to talk about, and I want to get to a specific question, a specific player that you guys all brought up. Second and third segment is our mailbag. This is a special mailbag for our Eagles Nest insiders who have sent in specific questions they want answered. It's a lot about camp stuff. There's a little smattering of basketball in there too. We'll get into all of that in segments 2 and 3. I think you're going to really like this. And thank you to all our Eagles Nesters who have joined our program. If you want to join, it's in the notes. All right, let's get into this. As I said, lots of players are going to have one big practice. And it's hard to extrapolate a big deal out of a handful of plays because you never know the next day they could struggle, they could have the defense or offense could take advantage of them, whatever the case may be. But we're now 6 days into practice, 6 practices we've watched, and I have to tell you, one player who we did not see much of last year has really caught my attention, and that is Montana wide receiver Reed Harris. Reed Harris is 6'5". He's not built, as I've said on previous episodes, he's not built like a tight end, though. He is built every bit like a wide receiver, and he is good. On Friday's practice, Mitchell Wolf was there. He said Reed Harris balled out through most of the practice. I saw last practice I was at on Tuesday, Reed Harris had a big long catch from Grayson James. Now, if you look at the wide receiver depth chart, right, the 3 starters are pretty much cemented. You have Jerron Bradley, Jaden Skeet, and Lewis Bond. They're all going to be guys, but you're going to have a very deep room when you have a guy like Reed Harris, who is you're going to have to play this guy because he's a playmaker. He's big. He's a matchup challenge, and he's going to get a chance to do that. Today, specifically, Bradley had a scheduled day. I think it was a scheduled day off. He was not in pads, nothing major. He's not like he was in a boot or anything like that. But Harris got that opportunity to play with the ones. And even playing against the projected starters on the defense, Harris still had a big practice. That's a big deal, right? Like, yeah, I hear folks like always talking about like Grayson James. And he's going to take over for Thomas Castellanos. Well, hold on a second. Grayson James goes against the 2s all the time. It's very different when you go against the starters. And BC's deep enough, but I want to see what a guy looks like when he goes up against, when he's going against Amari Jackson or, one of the other, Max Tucker. You want to see what he can do in those situations. And he did it. He's good. And again, this is the same caveat I want to say that I said about Jerron Bradley. Height is one thing. You can be big, but you might not have the best hands. You may not be quick. You may not be able to run a great route. You have all these other tangible things that you need to be able to do as a wide receiver. And so far, Harris has shown he could do all of that. He's not just a big body. This guy is athletic too. This is a guy that I think we're going to talk about this year. I was talking to somebody on the staff earlier, and they were like, "Yeah, we're expecting him to play a role at some point this season." So I think this is big, and I think it's also really funny that he's from Montana. How many? We have a quarterback coming in next year from Oklahoma. We have a wide receiver from Montana. We're starting to get recruits from states I don't think I ever remember Boston College landing recruits from. I would honestly tell you, I don't know. I mean, I've been covering this team for 15 or, covering for 10, following along for another 10. I don't remember a single player from the state of Montana. And Harris comes in. He was a high school quarterback. He was a quarterback in high school, and people were asking about that. He is built like a great wide receiver. I'm very interested to see what they do with him, because now you had your three, and I mentioned him, but you also have Jaden McGowan. Jaden McGowan is going to need to play too. Like, as I mentioned, those starting three, McGowan is a guy that, he's getting reps with the twos right now, but I think that's just to get him reps, because they're doing a lot of three wide receiver sets, and they're not doing four receivers, so he's not going to get out there. But you have five wide receivers, all of them really good. And I think this could be the deepest group of wide receivers Boston College has had in years. Because you go back, right? Last year you had Lewis Bond. He was fine, good. Sorry. Jaden Skeet, he came along, but it was kind of thin after that, right? Then you had the year before, you had Zay and Jalen Gill, but Jalen Gill didn't do a whole lot. I could make an argument that Boston College has five receivers, all of whom could lead the team in either receiving or receiving yards and touchdowns by the end of the year. I imagine Jerron Bradley is going to be a touchdown machine in the red zone. The way he's built, I imagine Lewis Bond is going to be a reception, a ball hog, because he's the guy that you get the ball to and he's going to get you yards. Jaden Skeet is probably the most refined wide receiver. So there's a lot of talent. And the fact that you can now add Reed Harris to that group, another big wide receiver for you, and one you'll have for a couple years. He's only a redshirt freshman. He's only getting in this year. That's a really nice problem to have. It's a really nice problem. Because you look at other positions and they don't have the depth that this has. I look at tight ends right now. I mentioned this on a previous episode, but you have you have Jeremiah Franklin, who's been around for 3 years. You brought in Kamari Morales from UNC, who's going to be your starting tight end. After that, it's Matt Reagan, who hasn't played much, but I think he'll be fine. And a bunch of freshmen and transfers, like preferred walk-ons. So you have guys like Ryan Boltwood. You haven't seen much of him. You have Danny Edgehill, who I've seen have some nice catches, but the depth isn't there like it is at the wide receiver position. So I look at the wide receivers and say, this is a group that's going to be super talented. That's going to give Thomas Castellanos a ton of weapons and versatility in what they can do. And that's going to be exciting, because again, Jaden McGowan, you get him the ball, he's going to be impossible to tackle in space. You get Reed Harris the ball deep and or up, just like Jerron Bradley, he's going to be hard to get, to slow down, because he's 6'5". All of these are great attributes and makes your wide receiver group very versatile and very dangerous. Now, in our second segment, I said this before, we're going to open up the mailbag. I want to talk a little bit about Steve Addazio versus Jeff Hafley, a question about the kicking. We have questions about tight end depth. We have a whole bunch of things that we're going to get to in just a moment. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. In this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. You want to bet on the Red Sox? They're playing pretty well. You can get the money line, you can get the odds. All of that is ready to go at FanDuel. So go over to FanDuel and make sure you get that daily deal. And visit FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black, and I was telling you about this Eagles Nest Subtext Program. It is right now, the first 30 people who sign up, and we have only a few spots left, who want to sign up, you get text from me. You can have actual conversations with me easily. You get videos from me. You get nuggets from me. It's going to be free for the first 30 people through the end of the football season. And I want to do a special feature with my Eagles Nesters where they're going to ask questions that I'm going to answer here on today's show. So I'm going to kick this off with a question from Joe from Sudbury. Joe from Sudbury says, AJ, I really appreciate all the hard work you do and enjoy listening to your podcast. Two quick questions, a question and a statement. I'm curious to know whether the offense is starting to develop a philosophy of scoring a lot of points or more ball control. I'm curious to see what you're seeing. And then apparently I keep calling it Belmont Hills. It's Belmont Hill. I apologize. Well, anyways, Joe from Sudbury. So I've noticed ball control is very important right now. I wrote this up on Eagle Insider yesterday that Castellanos has really limited the amount of like WTF passes, like passes where you're like, what is he throwing to? Who did he see? Why did he throw that there? It's much more controlled, I think, at least what I've seen through the first week. O'Brien comes from the Nick Saban and Bill Belichick's style of offense where the turnovers are a big deal. They do not want to make stupid turnovers. They do not want to give up possessions. So they're going to be able to try to limit that. I think that's going to be super important for them. I think they're going to want to make sure that Castellanos isn't like just hucking the ball and saying Hail Mary and going for it. I think they're going to be more conservative on that end, but I think they want to be explosive as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're going to take chances. In terms of what I've seen, Castellanos specifically, I feel has been much more in control of where he's throwing the ball and less in that area where you're just going, what does he see? Why did he throw that? Which we saw so much last year. That was a big problem from him. That's why he had 15 touchdowns to 14 interceptions and why he's not getting the credit as a quarterback that he really should. Because if he can cut that down, if he can make himself more of an efficient quarterback, one that doesn't make those mistakes, he will be one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. But that's a big question mark. And I've seen a lot of encouraging signs at camp. I just want to, we're going to have to wait till we see him play Florida State, who's going to have a ferocious defense, to see how Castellanos protects the ball and how this offense goes about doing things so they don't turn the ball over. But Joe from Sudbury, thank you so much for your question. Next, we have Mike G from Long Island, who said, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your confidence in the kicking game? Confidence in the kicking game. I'm going to put it at like a 5. I've watched a bunch of kicking drills so far. I think Liam Connor is okay within like 35 to 40. Anything beyond that, I don't have a ton of confidence in the kicking game. But you know what? I don't want to rip on Connor or their backup kicker, Luca Lombardo, because how many college kickers can consistently do that? It's like an issue everywhere. That's why you play the NCAA football game and you're kicking on the road and the thing is going wonky and you end up kicking it into the bleachers. It's because that's kind of not that realistic, but it's realistic to the point that college kickers are inconsistent. I think that Liam Connor will be fine in the like moderate field goal spots. I will worry more when he gets a little longer. They were doing stuff from within like 45, 47, and he and Luca Lombardo were hit or miss for a lot of those. So I would put it at like a 5. Like I'm not worried about it, but I'm not super confident on it either. Does that make sense? So I'll give it a 5 for that one. That's a great question. Thank you so much for asking. Joseph on YouTube asked a question on one of my videos. I want to make sure I get to that because Joseph is a super fan and part of the Eagles Nest, and he got one of those questions in. And he wanted to know, AJ, tell me more about the tight ends in the offensive line. How are they looking? Okay. So I got to caveat this with a few different things because it's only the first week. They're not even in pads yet, so they're not hitting completely yet. But from what I've seen, the offensive line has done a good job. You have a starting line of Kendall, Dwayne Alec, because Logan Taylor is out, Jude Bowery, Ozzie Trapilo, and Jack Conley. I have not seen like jailbreak pass rushes come through and nail Castellanos or Grayson James yet. I have not seen. I've seen the runs get stuffed here and there, but it's like fair because I've also seen the runs go deep too. I've seen some really good runs too, and a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. So I'm going to go with what I've said about this offensive line this year. There's potential there. I love their tackles. I think Jude Bowery is awesome. He could end up being the best tackle or offensive lineman that they have on their roster, even better than Trapilo. And Ozzie Trapilo is great too. So you have 2 good offensive linemen, and I think Drew Kendall is good too. I don't have nothing against that. And then Jack Conley will be fine, and Logan Taylor should be fine. So overall, I think the offensive line will be good. The tight end position, though, I have to say I'm a little worried about it because you do have two solid tight ends. I love what Kamari Morales can do in the pass game. Like, he has good hands and gives you a weapon that you really haven't had since Hunter Long. Like, you brought in Trey Berry a couple years ago and he was okay, but he got hurt all the time. Same thing with George Takis, but he wasn't even that great with his hands. I didn't think he was all that great there. This is a different style of tight end. This is more like the Hunter Long. He's not as explosive as Hunter Long is, but he can catch the ball, and that'll give you a tight end that TC can check down to. I like that, and Franklin's fine as a tight end number 2, but it's after that, kind of what I said in that first segment, where you don't have a ton of depth. Once you get past Franklin, you have Matt Reagan, who I think next year should be fine to be your starting tight end, but he might have some blips if you put him out there this year. And then after that, it's a giant question mark because I don't, I haven't sat and analyzed the third and fourth teams because I usually watch the ones and twos a lot of the time. But you get guys like Ryan Boltwood and Danny Edgehill out there. I don't know much about them, and I don't know how they would like deal with playing against ones, and I would be a little concerned there. So you got to hope this tight end room stays healthy because the talent is there. You just don't want to lose a guy or two and then end up having to really dig deep into your depth because that could be a problem. So thank you, to Joseph, who asked a question on YouTube on one of our private channels. And we'll get into that. More questions, including a basketball question about Earl Grant and recruiting. I'll get into all that in just a moment. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to your first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. You want to head to Yankee Stadium? Maybe you're in New York and you're dying to see Aaron Judge play. Get over there. Find the tickets that you want. You're going to get all in prices a lot of the times and view from your seat so you're knowing how close to the action you will be. So save up to 60% last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, this is Locked On Boston College, and thank you all for listening to making us your first listen every day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with the discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back. This is AJ Black, and we're talking about our Eagles Nest mailbag. Again, these are all of our subtext insiders who had asked questions that they wanted to have answered. If you want to join, I've had a lot of great feedback about this. A lot of the people on subtext are really enjoying this. I hope you just come over and try it out. There's no obligation. You don't need to put a credit card, I believe, to start it out. Just check it out. See if you like it. It's free through for the football season if you are one of the first 30 to sign up. So check it out soon. All right, let's get to some questions. This is a fun one. A question you may not want to answer publicly. Who was a better coach for BC, Daz or Haf? And then they said, we know the answer is Daz, but it's unfashionable to say so. Yes. You guys all know, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, I was not the biggest Steve Addazio fan. But I will admit a few different things. He, for the most part, there was lots of times, there was a couple times, the Kansas game specifically, where he fell apart. But for the most part, games that BC was supposed to win, they won under Steve Addazio. That under Jeff Hafley was always a giant question mark. Between the two UConn games, Northern Illinois, they barely beat Texas State his first year here. You can go up and down. UMass, they struggled with. He never was able to do that. Also, I thought Steve Addazio, whether you like him or not, was really good at developing players. You look at the NFL level, all the guys that are there, whether it's Justin Simmons or Chris Lindstrom, who is more Addazio than Hafley. He brought in Zion Johnson. He brought in AJ Dillon. He was not the nicest guy and to like. He wasn't the easiest guy to like, excuse me. But you have to admit at the end of the day that Addazio did more for the program than Jeff Hafley did. Jeff Hafley, I thought, was a great ambassador. Like, he was a guy that most people liked for the most part. Near the end, he kind of fell off. But I don't think he did much. I think he was way more overwhelmed with the job than Steve Addazio was. I think Addazio was a better fit for that job. So that's a great question there. So you got it from me. So now Ryan from Saratoga asks, thanks, AJ. What, if anything, can we expect to see from Turbo Richard this fall? Now, I talked about Reed Harris at the beginning of this episode, but I almost wanted to make it a two-parter that Turbo Richard should be mentioned as well. BC did a nice job. Again, Jeff Hafley deserves credit for it, but Jeff Hafley did a nice job of reinventing that offensive, the running back room. I think Frank Signetti had a thing for smaller running backs. When you had guys like Xavier Coleman, Cam Barfield, and Alex Brum as your primary backups, and all of them are like 5'8" or below, that's an issue. Now the running back room has Kai Robichaux, who's big, Jordan McDonald, who's big, Trayshawn Ward, who's solid, Dottrell Jones, who's solid, and now Turbo Richard, who is also solid. You have a stacked offensive running back room. Now, I don't expect Turbo to be a every down back, and I don't expect him to take a huge role this year. But I will say this: I would be surprised if he is redshirted this year. He has made a impact big time through the first week of camp. Like, he looks like, you see freshmen out there, and they look like freshmen a lot of the time. Like, just the way they play. Like, you can see a guy like Cedric Clark, right? He's only played football for a year, and at times he's made some good plays recently. But at times you can see, like, oh, this is a true freshman just getting to college. You don't see that with Turbo. Turbo looks like he's been around for a while, and he's built like he's been around for a while. So if BC needs him, they're going to use him. I think they'll use him. But as I said before, there's a lot of depth in front of him. I wouldn't be surprised if he would jump someone like Jordan McDonald on the depth chart. Jordan McDonald is huge. But, like, if there was an injury, say, Kai goes down. If he goes down, I could totally see someone like Turbo getting that spot over someone like Jordan McDonald. Just the way that they've been playing so far. So that's kind of my thoughts on that one. I got a couple other quick questions. Are there any Herzlich-size type linebackers being recruited in the near future, like Griffin, 6'3" or bigger, from Moose on the Cape May, New Jersey? No, not that I know of. They're going for more typical linebackers, I can tell you that. So you're going to get guys that are bigger size. No more of this relying on safety hybrids. I think they're going to be getting bigger linebackers. You have Griffin Collins coming in next year, who's got good size, and you have Zachary Thomas, who I believe I have to pull it up for a second. He is 6'2", so he's around the same size too. So bigger guy, like, they're getting bigger, and I think you're going to see more physical linebackers. And this year you're going to get a treat because I think you're going to watch Davion Crouch, who I think he's 6'1" though, but he's physical. He's not like Cam Arnold or Bryce Steele, who are more, converts to linebackers. This is a guy that played edge and outside linebacker all through high school, and he's going to do it again this year. He's made some big plays too. So thank you, Moose, for that question. I love the name Moose. So, and then I think this is the last one. Chris from Brooklyn. Hi, AJ. Which BC players do you think are most poised to make a huge leap up draft boards this season? My money's on Trapillo today. I agree with you. I think Trapillo's one that you're going to want to watch for. I think he could go up as high as, I think Mitch and I have talked, like potentially like third or fourth round. But a big year, tackles are a premium. If he shows that he can do what you need from an NFL tackle, maybe he goes second or third. Like, maybe that's where he progresses up to. The other name that keeps coming into my head, that I think will have a year that pushes him up, is Cam Horsley. Cam Horsley, their defensive tackle, is already catching a lot of attention. I said before that Jim Nagy of the Senior Bowl has him projected to be a first or second round draft pick if he has a big year. I think he will. I think this is one of the best defensive tackles BC has ever had in the last 15 years since BJ Raji. If he has a big year, he will be sought after. He's got good size. He's like 6'3", 300 plus pounds. He will be someone that scouts are going to drool over. And I think that I would really feel that with a big year, he will get drafted pretty high. And then our final question, Tom from Colchester, Connecticut. Given how promising next year's class looks, is there a scenario where Earl gets fired after this year? I don't think so. I think Earl's around for at least a couple more years. Especially, I know that folks really wanted to get to the tournament last year, and the fact that they didn't was a bit disappointing. But they made the NIT. They won 20 plus games. So you basically with the hot seat, basically kind of had to hit the reset button. He basically is going to get a pass this year. And I think he might need it because I'm not sure how good this team is going to be. But I could not see, if they struggle all year, I could not see them firing him because he just did what you asked him to do, which is win 20 plus games and get to a tournament. And something your coaches haven't done in a long time. So I feel like he's doing what you want. Now, even if he brings in all these guys in 2 years, and they struggle, say they struggle this year and then they struggle next year, that's when I would say the hot seat starts kicking in. But this year, I feel like it's his free pass. I don't see him. I wouldn't worry about him getting fired this year. So that wraps it up. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed that Eagles Nest questions. I'm going to do this every week. Give us something to talk about during the middle of the week. So if you have questions on the Eagles Nest, get over there, send them on over to me. I'd love to answer your questions on the air. And thank you all who have taken advantage of that. And if you have not done so already, give us 5 stars and subscribe to Locked On BC wherever you get your podcast. Now, if you're done with this, let me tell you to go check out Locked On ACC with Alex Dono and Kenton Gibbs. You can hear them. They hate on Boston College a lot. They had them second to last in the ACC. Go over there, check out what they have to say. I wasn't too happy with their poll, but it is what it is. Now, thank you all. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247 or at Locked On BC, and we'll see you again on Monday. I should be at least at one practice this weekend. Hopefully, we have the scrimmage next Wednesday. There's going to be so much to talk about here. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast so you do not miss another episode of Locked On Boston College.